Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final episode of the Promotion and Relegation Show, as we are going to be wrapping up the end of the season results. We're going to be looking at bowl results. We're going to be looking at the final conference rankings. We're going to be looking at the award winners and the All-Americans, as well as the NCAA stat leaders for this year. And we will do a quick summary of every team that will be moving conferences and their conference champions. So let's go ahead and get this all started. So going over the bowl results and the results of the highlight games. Air Force was able to win over Temple. Oklahoma State was blown out by Second Haven. Boise State was able to pull off a close one against Rapid City. USC avenged their conference title game loss by beating LSU, and Georgia Tech took a victory over Utah State in an offensive shootout. And UTEP was humbled by Alabama. Overall, the American Conference had the best winning percentage in the bowl games. They played, only losing one game and winning 5. The SEC would finish in second, going 6-3. The conference with the worst record was the Independents, losing the 2 games they had, and the Conference USA would finish in second to last, going 1-4. So now talking about the BCS bowl games, Wake Forest will end up beating Kansas in the Rose Bowl in a close one. This was a hard-fought game between 2 teams deserving of their promotion to Tier 1. In the Fiesta Bowl, Wisconsin was able to dominate over MAC champion Miami, Ohio. It was a complete mismatch of strengths, and Wisconsin showing theirs was the strongest. Miami was able to pull off a close one over Utah after Utah was unable to convert a 2-point conversion in the closing minutes of the game. In the Orange Bowl, Ohio State showed their dominance over the NCAA by blowing out the Big 12 champion Texas A&M. Ohio State was certainly hoping for more this season, but finished the season in dominant fashion, which now leads us to the national championship game between Penn State and Oregon. And Penn State was able to pull off the victory in a last-minute touchdown to finish off the Ducks. What a season it was for Penn State, almost not making it to the ACC championship game, to beating maybe the most talented team in the NCAA to play for that national championship, and then to winning the national championship. The conferences ranked just about how the tiers are set up, except for the MAC, who fell below the Sun Belt. The SEC was the top of Tier 1, the Big Ten was the top of Tier 2, and the Sun Belt was the top of Tier 3. So now looking at the award winners, All-Americans, and stat leaders for the NCAA. Even with Ohio State losing in their conference championship game and not qualifying for the national title game, Travion Henderson would end up finishing the season as the Heisman Trophy winner and taking other hardware with him. He now has the option to either go to the draft or come back for one more year. And now we're looking at the All-Americans. For the All-Americans, Billings has been saying they have had the best middle linebacker in the nation, and that will be proven with Dallas DeLoach being a first-team All-American for middle linebackers. Billings also saw 2 freshman All-Americans in their bowl game, with Northern Illinois getting a wide receiver and a linebacker to earn that honor. The ACC All-Americans are led by Ohio State. This isn't surprising because they have looked like the best team in the nation all year. CJ Stroud and Travion Henderson are the standouts from that list. The Big Ten saw a lot more parity in their All-Americans, which would make sense with how competitive the conference is. The Big Ten is led by a quarterback from the Big Ten in Tyler Show from Texas Tech. The Big 12 is going to have a dominating number of athletes from Oklahoma receiving first-team honors, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which only brings more disappointment for how their season ended after finishing the season undefeated until they lost to Texas A&M and their first-team quarterback, Max Johnson. Wake Forest will find themselves with a number of athletes earning first-team honors from the American Conference, which makes sense with them being the team that is going to be promoted up into Tier 1 and into the SEC. The Conference USA is headlined by first-team quarterback Gabriel Yates from Rapid City and first-team running back Jordan Carew. Utah State earned promotion to Tier 2 behind their NFL-caliber athletes earning those first-team honors, who will be coming back for at least one more year, as well being only sophomores. Rapid City and Northern Illinois are teams to watch next year, with most of their first-team talent coming back next year. Tier 4 is going to see their headlining quarterback Slade Berry from Bellows Falls for possibly 2 more years. And now Miami, Ohio showed why they are so dominant in the MAC this season by taking 12 spots in the first team and 5 more in the second team. Billings will take 2 spots in the first team All-Americans with Dallas DeLoach and Khalid Cook, taking those spots with their awesome seasons. The Pac-12 All-Americans shows why USC and Oregon are the teams that always face each other in the conference title games, because their athletes are the ones that are taking most of the positions available. I wouldn't expect much different this season into the next season either. The SEC is headlined by one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, being Drake May. His quarterback rating was the highest in the nation, with a rating that was higher than 200. He was the only quarterback to earn that high of a ranking. The Sun Belt had a lot more parity in their athletes, but was headed by their first-team quarterback Gunnar Watson from Troy. So now looking at the NCAA stat leaders. Allie Brigham from Joplin led the nation in rushing, going for over 2,000 yards. And on top of that, he averaged over 200 yards per game. He was dominating this entire year. If he has a team that probably had a better record, then he would have probably been in the conversation for the Heisman Award, because this year was the year of the running back for the Heisman hopefuls. Wide receiver Raheem Jarrett from Maryland earned the triple, leading the nation in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. This is why he easily won the award for the best wide receiver. The leader in interceptions for the NCAA ended up being from a Tier 3 team, being from Rapid City. Frank McKnight ended the season with 8 interceptions, being the sole leader in the NCAA. Elijah Wood was a big-time standout from the Tier 2 conferences, leading the nation in defensive touchdowns for the year. And talking about special teams, Billings had a fantastic returner in Terrence Brothers. He was somebody that was always a threat when it came to punt returns and kick returns, but surprisingly, for how good he was and how much Billings talked about him, he wasn't really on the top 5 of most of the punt return and kick return stat leaders. He actually was more middle of the road than anybody else, which is going to be a big time challenge for Billings to try and replace coming up in this next year. So now let's do a quick rundown of all the changes that will happen with which teams will be relegated to a lower tier and those that are going to be promoted to a higher tier. We're going to first start with the West region. The Pac-12 saw a rematch in the conference title game between USC and Oregon. Oregon was again the victor in this matchup and are 3-0 overall against USC in this dynasty. And the team finishing at the bottom is going to be BYU. They will find themselves relegated to Tier 2 and into the Mountain West. The team that will be replacing them is going to be Kansas after they finished in first place, only losing to Billings and beating all the other top teams in the conference. They will find themselves up in Tier 1 to the Pac-12. The team that finished at the bottom of the Mountain West was Fresno State. And because the West Division of the Conference USA won the Promotion Championship game, that will mean that Fresno State is going to be relegated to the Conference USA and Tier 3. And speaking on the Conference USA, Utah State faced Northern Illinois in the Promotion Championship game and won that one, moving them up into the Tier 2 Mountain West Conference. The team that finished in last place of the West Division in the Conference USA was UNLV. They will find themselves relegated to Tier 4 and move into the Independents because Colorado State was the team that claimed first place from there. This will mean that UNLV and Colorado State will be switching places. And that will do it for the West region, and we will now move into the Central region. Starting in Tier 1 with the Big 12, Oklahoma found themselves in the conference title game for the second year in a row. They faced Texas A&M, who were the victorious team in that meeting. This is the second year in a row that Oklahoma made it to the conference title game and lost. This time was a killer as it ruined their perfect season and a chance at playing for the national title. The team that finished at the bottom of the conference was SMU, who will find themselves relegated to the Big Ten and Tier 2. They are going to be replaced by Wisconsin, who are going to be promoted to Tier 1 and move into the Big 12. The team that finished in last in the Tier 2 and the Big Ten was Iowa, who lost the tiebreaker between two other teams. Luckily for them, the Central Division winner in the Conference USA lost, which means they will stay in Tier 2. And now talking about the Conference USA Central Division, Northern Illinois was the leader in this division, but were unable to win the Promotion Championship game and will stay in Tier 3. This will be the second year in a row that the Central Division were unable to win that promotion game. And that will wrap it up for the west side of the country. We will now end up talking about the Southeast region, first starting with the SEC. The SEC found North Carolina advancing to play in the conference title game for the second year in a row. This time they faced Miami after they beat Alabama to advance to that game. Miami were the champions of that game, winning the SEC. The team that finished in last place was UCF. They will move down into Tier 2 and into the American Conference after they were relegated. Now moving to Tier 2 and the American Conference. The leader of that conference and the team that will be promoted to the SEC was Wake Forest. The team finishing in last in the American Conference was Memphis. However, they will be staying in Tier 2 because the leader of the Southeast Division of the Sun Belt in Tier 3 was Virginia. They were relegated to the Sun Belt last year, which means they were ineligible for promotion this year, which means there was no change between the lower tiers of the Southeast region. And now we move to the final region, being the Northeast region. In the ACC championship game, Ohio State found themselves in the championship game for the second time. They faced Penn State this time around, who controlled the time of possession in that championship game, beating the powerful Ohio State Buckeyes and moving them on to the national championship game. They faced Oregon for the Crystal Football and the national championship trophy, and Penn State were able to win that game and earned their first national championship in this dynasty. Oregon found themselves losing their second national title game in a row. The team that finished in last in the ACC was Cincinnati. This will move them down into Tier 2 and being relegated to the MAC. The champion of the MAC was Miami, Ohio, after being the first Tier 2 team to go undefeated in conference play. They will find themselves promoted up into the ACC. The team that found themselves at the bottom of the MAC was Eastern Michigan for the second year in a row. This time, they will find themselves relegated to Tier 3 and the Sun Belt after Temple earned automatic promotion after playing Virginia in the Sun Belt Championship game and beating them. Temple will replace Eastern Michigan and be promoted to the MAC. And that will do it for this edition of the Promotion and Relegation Show end of season special. Thank you so much for watching and sticking around through the series. We are moving on into the off season coming up, and I am excited to show you what season 3 is going to bring for both Oswego and Billings. There is big stuff coming up, and we are seeing some positive momentum moving forward with both teams. If you've liked the series, share it with a friend, subscribe if you'd like, and we will see you in those off-season videos.